What if I told you there are 15 motorcycles so catastrophically flawed that only the stupidest riders would even consider them in 2026? These are mechanical disasters that will destroy your wallet, and buying them would be the biggest regret of your life. Today, we're counting down 15 worthless motorcycles that only stupid people would buy in 2026. Starting our countdown at number 15, we have Hyosung. And I'm not talking about just one bad model here. I'm talking about an entire brand built on the revolutionary concept of motorcycles that barely work. This isn't just poor engineering. It's like someone took the concept of reliability and decided to do the exact opposite, just to see what would happen. Take the GT650R with its 647cc V-twin producing 72 horsepower at 9,000 RPM and 46 pound-feet of torque at 7,500 RPM. On paper, these numbers sound reasonable for a mid-size sport bike. In reality, it's like buying a lottery ticket where the only prize is more problems. The bike weighs 430 pounds wet, which should make it nimble and fun. Instead, it handles like a shopping cart with a gambling addiction. The electrical system has more mood swings than a reality TV star going through a messy divorce. Owners report mysterious shutdowns, phantom error codes that appear and disappear like ghosts, and charging systems that work only when Mercury is in retrograde. One owner documented his GT650R's electrical failures in a blog that read like a horror novel. Day 47. The bike started today, but only after I performed the sacred ritual of turning the key exactly 3.7 times while humming the Korean national anthem. But here's the real kicker. When something breaks, and it will break, you'll spend more time hunting for parts than actually riding. The dealer network is so sparse that finding a Hyosung mechanic is like finding a competent politician. Theoretically possible, but practically impossible. The parts availability is worse than finding a unicorn in your backyard. But if you think Korean engineering disasters are bad, wait until you see what happens when the Germans forget how to German and decide to build premium disappointment machines. At number 14, we have the early 2011 BMW S1000RR, proving that even legendary German engineering can catastrophically fail when it really puts its mind to it. This 999cc inline-4 produces 193 horsepower at 13,000 RPM and 83 pound-feet of torque at 9,750 RPM, numbers that should make any superbike enthusiast weak in the knees. Instead, they made owners weak in the wallet and strong in the art of filing insurance claims. The bike weighs 455 pounds wet and features BMW's revolutionary asymmetric headlight design, which was supposed to be aerodynamically superior. Unfortunately, the only thing superior about this bike was its ability to turn premium German engineering into premium German disappointment. The connecting rod issues were so serious that BMW was forced to issue a major recall, but the damage was already done. Engines had seized, riders had crashed, and BMW's reputation took a hit harder than a meteor impact on a glass house. The most shocking part was that BMW's legendary quality control had missed such a fundamental flaw. These weren't minor issues like squeaky brakes or loose mirrors. They were catastrophic failures that could happen without warning, turning your $15,000 superbike into a very expensive paperweight. Imagine cruising down the highway at 80 miles per hour when suddenly your engine decides to commit suicide, taking your confidence and possibly your life with it. The recall process was a masterclass in corporate damage control. BMW initially blamed rider error and improper maintenance, which is like blaming the passengers when your airplane's wings fall off. They suggested that owners weren't following proper warm-up procedures, as if there's a special German ritual required to prevent your connecting rods from exploding. But German engineering disasters pale in comparison to what happens when Japanese manufacturers decide to build historical death traps that make modern safety standards weep. Number 13 brings us the Kawasaki H2 Mach 4, a bike so dangerous it makes the BMW's mechanical failures look like minor inconveniences. This 748cc two-stroke triple produces explosive power delivery that isn't just exciting, it's homicidal. While the BMW might leave you stranded with a seized engine, the H2 might leave you in the afterlife with a seized everything. The H2 produces around 74 horsepower at 6,800 RPM, which doesn't sound like much by today's standards. But here's the thing about two-stroke power delivery. It's not about the peak numbers, it's about how violently those numbers arrive. The power curve looks like a cliff face, going from gentle purring kitten to rabid tiger on methamphetamines in the span of about 200 RPM. It's like having a light switch that controls a nuclear reactor. At 452 pounds wet, the H2 should be manageable, but the handling is so poor that experienced riders describe it as actively trying to kill you. The frame flexes like a wet noodle. The suspension was designed by someone who apparently thought damping was optional, and the brakes are adequate for stopping a bicycle, not a 74 horsepower missile with delusions of grandeur. Professional racers refuse to ride it, which should tell you everything you need to know about its character. Insurance companies treated the H2 like a ticking time bomb, and emergency rooms became familiar with its distinctive injury patterns. The bike earned nicknames like the Widowmaker and the Green Meanie, and these weren't terms of endearment. They were warnings, like danger high-voltage signs on electrical equipment. But if you think bikes that try to kill you are bad, wait until you see what happens when Japanese engineering creates something that's only fun if you have a death wish and the reflexes of a fighter pilot. At number 12, the Yamaha V-Max 1200 takes the H2's dangerous reputation and adds modern reliability, which somehow makes it worse. This 1,198cc liquid-cooled V4 produces 145 horsepower at 8,000 RPM and 84 pound-feet of torque at 6,500 RPM. Unlike the H2's unpredictable two-stroke chaos, the V-Max's danger is consistent, reliable, and thoroughly engineered. At 580 pounds dry, this thing has the agility of a freight train and about as much stopping power. The V-Boost system kicks in at 6,000 RPM, opening additional intake valves and transforming the bike from merely dangerous to actively homicidal. It's like having a mild-mannered accountant who transforms into the Hulk every time someone mentions spreadsheets. The braking system consists of twin 282mm front discs with 2 piston calipers and a single rear disc. These numbers sound adequate until you realize you're trying to stop a 580 pounds of motorcycle that's accelerating like it's been shot from a cannon. It's like trying to stop a runaway freight train with a pair of flip-flops. The handling characteristics can best be described as terrifying with a side of nightmare fuel. The bike was designed for straight-line acceleration, and any attempt to change direction at speed results in what can only be described as controlled panic. The wheelbase is long enough to park a small car, and the rake and trail numbers suggest that Yamaha's engineers were more concerned with straight-line stability than cornering ability. But here's what makes the V-Max worse than the H2. It's predictably dangerous. While the H2 was dangerous due to poor engineering and unpredictable power delivery, the V-Max was dangerous by design. Yamaha knew exactly what they were creating: a muscle bike that prioritized straight-line performance over everything else, including rider survival. But dangerous bikes that work are nothing compared to reliable bikes that forgot how to be reliable and decided to become electrical nightmares instead. Number 11 brings us the 2007 CBR 600RR, proving that even Honda can build unreliable junk when they really put their minds to it. This 599cc inline-4 produces 117 horsepower at 13,500 RPM and 48 pound-feet of torque at 11,250 RPM. Numbers that should make this a fantastic middleweight sport bike. Instead, it became a masterclass in how to destroy a legendary reputation with electrical incompetence. The bike weighs 357 pounds dry and features Honda's Unit Pro Link rear suspension, which should provide excellent handling characteristics. Unfortunately, the regulator R rectifier failures are so common, they should come with a countdown timer and a backup plan. It's like buying a Honda that forgot how to be a Honda and decided to cosplay as a British bike from the 1970s. This was particularly insulting coming from Honda, a company built on the revolutionary concept of motorcycles that actually work. For decades, Honda had been the gold standard of reliability. The brand you bought when you wanted a bike that would start every morning and run for 100,000 miles without complaint. The 2007 CBR 600RR threw all of that out the window in favor of electrical gremlins that would make a Lucas electrical system blush. The regulator and rectifier problems weren't just inconvenient. They were relationship-ending. The charging system would fail without warning, leaving riders stranded with dead batteries and shattered faith in Japanese engineering. Worse, the failures often happened in cascades, with one electrical problem triggering others like dominoes falling in slow motion. The sensor failures turned the bike's sophisticated electronics into expensive paperweights. The fuel injection system, which should have been a marvel of modern engineering, became a source of constant anxiety. Riders reported mysterious stalling, erratic idle, and fuel delivery problems that made the bike run like it was powered by hopes and dreams, rather than gasoline. But Honda's accidental unreliability is nothing compared to what happens when manufacturers deliberately ruin good concepts with execution so poor it makes kindergarten art projects look professional. At number 10, the SV1000's 996cc V-twin produces 120 horsepower at 9,000 RPM and 75 pound-feet of torque at 7,200 RPM. On paper, this should be fantastic. A proven engine platform, decent chassis bones, and a reasonable price point. Unfortunately, Suzuki managed to ruin a good concept with poor execution that would make the Honda's electrical problems look like minor inconveniences. The bike weighs 436 pounds wet, which should make it nimble and responsive. Instead, it feels like riding a mechanical bull with ADHD and anger management issues. The fueling issues make the bike jerky and unpredictable, with throttle response that varies between dead fish and angry hornet, depending on the phase of the moon and your astrological sign. The fuel injection system was clearly designed by someone who had heard about fuel injection, but had never actually seen it work. The mapping is so poor that the bike runs like it's constantly arguing with itself about how much fuel to deliver. Low-speed riding becomes an exercise in patience and prayer, with the engine surging, stumbling, and generally behaving like it's powered by caffeinated squirrels. But the real tragedy is the wasted potential. The SV650 had proven that Suzuki could build excellent V-twin motorcycles that were reliable, fun, and affordable. The SV1000 took that successful formula and somehow made it worse by adding more displacement and less competence. It's like taking a perfectly good recipe and then replacing all the ingredients with cardboard and disappointment. The most frustrating part was that you could see the potential. On the rare occasions when everything worked properly, the SV1000 was actually enjoyable. The engine had character, the handling was decent, and the overall package showed glimpses of what it could have been. But those moments were so rare that most owners gave up and bought something else. But ruining good concepts is amateur hour compared to what happens when manufacturers charge premium prices for budget performance and then act surprised when customers feel scammed. Number 9 brings us the 2005 Ducati 999, featuring a 999cc L-twin, producing 140 horsepower at 9,750 RPM and 75 pound-feet of torque at 8,000 RPM. Wrapped in early electronic systems that were about as reliable as a weather forecast in a hurricane. While the SV1000 simply didn't work well, the 999 actively resented its owners and made sure they knew it. At 423 pounds dry, this should be a nimble, responsive superbike. Instead, it's a temperamental diva that requires more attention than a reality TV star and is about as reliable as a politician's campaign promises. Starting the bike requires a specific sequence of button presses that would make a NASA launch technician nervous. And even then, success is not guaranteed. The electronic fuel injection system was clearly designed by someone who thought user-friendly was a foreign concept. The bike's computer seems to be in a constant state of confusion about what it's supposed to be doing, delivering fuel in quantities that range from drought conditions to biblical flood. No apparent logic or consistency. The maintenance costs are astronomical, not just because the parts are expensive, though they are, but because diagnosing problems requires specialized equipment that most shops don't have. The ones that do have the equipment charge accordingly, treating every diagnostic session like they're performing brain surgery on a unicorn. But here's the most insulting part. When everything works properly, which happens about as often as solar eclipses, the 999 is actually a fantastic motorcycle. The engine has character, the handling is precise, and the overall package shows glimpses of Italian engineering excellence. Those moments are so fleeting that they feel like hallucinations. But expensive electronic nightmares are nothing compared to beautiful bikes that actively try to cook their riders while looking absolutely gorgeous doing it. At number 8, the MV Agusta F4750 is absolutely gorgeous. It looks like it was sculpted by Italian angels who had been studying motorcycle design at the feet of Michelangelo himself. Unfortunately, it runs like it was assembled by Italian demons, having a particularly bad day after a 3-day bender. The 749cc inline-4 produces 126 horsepower at 12,900 RPM and 55 pound-feet of torque at 10,500 RPM. But good luck enjoying any of that power, as this bike overheats faster than a laptop running Crisis in Death Valley. At 412 pounds dry, this should be a nimble, responsive superbike that dances through corners like a ballet dancer on espresso. Instead, it's more like a ballet dancer who's also on fire and can't stop screaming about it. The cooling system is about as effective as a chocolate teapot, and the electrical system has more issues than a reality TV show about dysfunctional families. The overheating problems aren't just annoying, they're dangerous and expensive. Riders report coolant boiling over in traffic, which is always fun when you're wearing leather pants and trying to maintain some semblance of dignity. The temperature gauge becomes a source of constant anxiety, climbing toward the red zone with the inevitability of death and taxes. But the real crime is how the overheating affects everything else. When the bike gets hot, which it always does, the electrical systems start behaving like they're having a nervous breakdown. The fuel injection goes haywire, the ignition timing becomes erratic, and various sensors start reporting readings that would make a science fiction writer blush. The electrical problems compound the overheating issues in a vicious cycle of mechanical dysfunction. Bad electrical connections generate heat, which makes the overheating worse, which damages more electrical components, which creates more heat. It's like watching a motorcycle slowly commit suicide while looking absolutely beautiful doing it. But bikes that overheat are nothing compared to adventure bikes that are afraid of adventures and break down in the exact places where breaking down could kill you. Number 7 brings us the KTM 950 Adventure, which promised off-road capability and long-distance reliability, but delivered mechanical anxiety and roadside breakdowns instead. This 942cc V-twin produces 98 horsepower at 8,000 RPM and 70 pound-feet of torque at 6,500 RPM, which sounds adequate for adventure riding until you realize the water pump and clutch slave cylinder fail more often than a politician's campaign promises. At 463 pounds wet, this should be a capable adventure machine ready to tackle anything from highway slabs to mountain trails. Instead, it's more like an expensive way to practice your survival skills in remote locations. While the MV Agusta overheats in traffic where help is available, The KTM breaks down in the wilderness, where the nearest tow truck is 200 miles away, and the local wildlife considers you a potential snack. The water pump failures aren't just inconvenient. They're trip-ending disasters that can leave you stranded in places where cell phone coverage is a myth and the nearest mechanic is a legend. When the water pump fails, the engine overheats rapidly, potentially causing catastrophic damage that turns your adventure bike into a very expensive paperweight in the middle of nowhere. The clutch slave cylinder issues are equally problematic, especially for an adventure bike that's supposed to handle challenging terrain. When the clutch system fails, you're left with a bike that can't shift gears properly, which is particularly problematic when you're trying to navigate rocky trails or steep inclines. But adventure bikes that break down are nothing compared to performance bikes that somehow made legendary engines boring while adding weight and ugliness. At number 6, the B-King took the legendary 1,340cc Hayabusa engine, producing 181 horsepower at 9,500 RPM and 101 pound-feet of torque at 7,200 RPM, and somehow made it boring. This is like taking a Formula One engine and putting it in a school bus, then wondering why nobody wants to drive it to work. At 573 pounds wet, this thing is heavier than the KTM and handles about as well as a freight train with square wheels. While the KTM at least had the excuse of being an adventure bike designed for carrying gear, the B-King was supposed to be a performance machine. Instead, it became a masterclass in how to take proven components and ruin them with poor execution. The styling looks like it was designed by someone who thought aggressive meant angry toaster that's been hit by a truck. The bike's appearance is so polarizing that it makes the Pontiac Aztek look conventionally attractive. It's like someone took all the worst design elements from the early 2000s and decided to build a motorcycle around them. But the real crime isn't just the ugly styling. It's how the extra weight and poor aerodynamics neutered the legendary Hayabusa engine. The same power plant that made the Hayabusa a legend feels sluggish and uninspiring in the B-King's heavy, ungainly chassis. It's like watching a thoroughbred racehorse trying to run while wearing concrete boots. The reliability issues prove that even proven engines can be ruined by poor execution and cost-cutting measures. Electrical problems plague the bike's various systems. Cooling issues arise from the poor airflow around the engine, and transmission quirks make shifting feel like you're operating a farm implement. But ugly, unreliable performance bikes are nothing compared to revolutionary bikes that revolutionized failure and turned cutting-edge technology into cutting-edge disappointment. Number 5 brings us the Bimota V-Due, which was supposed to be revolutionary with its direct injection two-stroke engine technology. Instead, it became revolutionary in new ways to disappoint customers and destroy a company's reputation. While the B-King simply failed to be exciting, the V-Due failed to be functional, which is considerably worse when you're paying exotic bike prices. The 500cc two-stroke V-twin was supposed to produce around 110 horsepower, while meeting emission standards that traditional two-strokes couldn't touch. On paper, this was brilliant. The power-to-weight ratio of a two-stroke with the cleanliness of a four-stroke. In reality, it was like promising to build a unicorn and delivering a donkey with a traffic cone taped to its head. The direct injection system was so poorly designed and executed that the bike would randomly shut down, refuse to start, or run so poorly that walking would be faster and more reliable. The fuel mapping was apparently done by someone who had heard about fuel injection, but had never actually seen it work. But the real tragedy wasn't just the technical failures. It was Bimota's response to customer complaints. Instead of acknowledging that they had created a fundamentally broken machine, they blamed everything except their own engineering. The fuel quality was wrong, the weather was wrong, the rider's technique was wrong, probably even the alignment of the planets was wrong. The V-Due's failure wasn't just a product disaster, it was a company-killing catastrophe. Bimota's reputation, built over decades of creating exotic, desirable motorcycles, was destroyed almost overnight. Customers who had paid premium prices for what they thought was cutting-edge technology instead got cutting-edge disappointment. But expensive Italian failures are nothing compared to budget bikes masquerading as premium products while delivering performance that would embarrass a scooter. At number 4, the Ducati Scrambler 62 features a 399cc air-cooled L-twin that produces a whopping 41 horsepower at 8,750 RPM and 25 pound-feet of torque at 8,000 RPM. While the Bimota was expensive and broken, the 62 is expensive and pathetic, which is somehow more insulting to your intelligence and your wallet. At 403 pounds wet, this thing has the power-to-weight ratio of a particularly athletic refrigerator. To put this in perspective, most modern scooters produce similar power while weighing significantly less. It's like Ducati took the concept of entry-level motorcycle and decided to make it as expensive and underpowered as possible. The most insulting aspect is how Ducati charges premium prices for this underpowered lawn ornament, simply because it has their logo on it. The maintenance costs are pure Italian exotic, which means you'll pay Ferrari prices to service what's essentially a very expensive moped. It's like buying a Rolex that only tells time in Italian and requires a specialist to change the battery. But here's what makes the 62 worse than the Bimota. At least the V-Due had revolutionary technology that didn't work. The 62 has ancient technology that barely works, wrapped in premium branding and sold at premium prices to people who apparently don't understand what they're buying. The performance figures are so embarrassing that they should come with a disclaimer. 0 to 60 miles per hour takes longer than most people's attention spans, and the top speed is limited more by the engine's ability to produce power than by aerodynamics or gearing. It's like buying a sports car that's slower than a minivan and costs twice as much. But Italian scams are nothing compared to American bikes that come with built-in self-destruction timers and the promise of authentic disappointment. Number 3 brings us the early 2000s Harley-Davidson Dyna models, which came with twin-cam engines featuring spring-loaded plastic cam chain tensioner shoes. While the Ducati scammed you with low power, Harley scammed you with a time bomb disguised as American iron. Using plastic parts in an engine is like using paper towels as brake pads. It might work for a while, but you're basically playing Russian roulette with physics. The twin-cam 88 engine produces around 67 horsepower and 82 pound-feet of torque, which should be adequate for a cruiser. Unfortunately, those plastic cam chain tensioner shoes wear out unpredictably, sometimes as early as 35,000 miles, shredding plastic bits that clog your oil pump like a hairball in a drain. When they fail, your engine goes from potato to expensive paperweight, faster than you can say warranty void. But here's what makes this worse than typical mechanical failures. Harley knew about these problems and continued shipping bikes with defective parts, because fixing the problem would have cost them money. It's like a car manufacturer knowing their airbags don't work but continuing to install them, because recalls are expensive. The failure mode is particularly insidious because it's often silent. Many riders don't hear obvious noise before the tensioner shoes fail catastrophically. The only reliable way to assess them is to open the cam cover and visually inspect the shoes, which means regular expensive maintenance just to check if your engine is about to self-destruct. When the plastic shoes fail, the consequences are devastating. The plastic fragments get pulled into the oil pump, which can clog or damage the pump and cut off oil flow to the engine. This can result in complete engine seizure, turning your $12,000 motorcycle into a very expensive sculpture. But American time bombs are nothing compared to German money pits that think they're sophisticated while delivering premium disappointment wrapped in Bavarian arrogance. At number 2, we have the BMW R1250R, featuring a 1,254cc boxer twin that produces 136 horsepower at 7,750 RPM and 105 pound-feet of torque at 6,250 RPM. While the Harley will eventually self-destruct in a dramatic fashion, the BMW will bankrupt you slowly and methodically, like death by 1,000 cuts administered by German precision engineering. This bike weighs 515 pounds wet and comes equipped with BMW's shift-cam variable valve timing system, which is German for expensive thing that breaks when you're 200 miles from the nearest dealer and costs more to fix than most people's cars. The system is supposed to optimize power delivery and fuel efficiency, but in practice it optimizes your mechanic's retirement fund. The electrical system has more mood swings than a teenager going through puberty during a full moon. The bike's computer seems to be in a constant state of existential crisis, throwing error codes that require specialized diagnostic equipment to interpret. These aren't simple check engine lights. They're complex German philosophical statements about the nature of mechanical existence. But here's what makes the BMW worse than the Harley. At least the Harley gives you some warning before it explodes. The BMW's failures are random, unpredictable, and expensive. You might be cruising down the highway when suddenly the bike decides it doesn't want to run anymore, leaving you stranded with a machine that costs more than most people's annual salary. The maintenance costs are so astronomical that owning an R1250R is like having a very expensive pet that only eats caviar and requires daily therapy sessions. Routine services that cost $200 on a Japanese bike cost $800 on the BMW, and that's assuming nothing actually needs to be fixed. But even German money pits pale in comparison to our #1 disaster, a bike so fundamentally broken that it redefined what dangerous means and turned the simple act of riding into an extreme sport. And finally, at #1, we have the Suzuki TL1000S, a bike so fundamentally broken that calling it a motorcycle is like calling a hand grenade a paperweight. This 996cc liquid-cooled 90-degree V-twin produces 125 horsepower at 8,500 RPM and 76 pound-feet of torque at 7,000 RPM, which sounds impressive until you realize it's attached to a chassis designed by someone who apparently thought stability was just a suggestion from the legal department. While every other bike on this list will disappoint you, bankrupt you, or bore you to death, the TL1000S will actually try to kill you with the efficiency of a German-engineered assassination machine. The infamous tank slapper problem isn't just a quirk, it's a feature that turns every ride into a potential near-death experience. At 412 pounds dry, this thing should handle like a dream. Instead, it handles like a caffeinated shopping cart with a death wish and anger management issues. The rear rotary damper system overheats faster than the MV Agusta, turning your suspension into expensive jello just when you need it most. It's like having a parachute that turns into a silk scarf right when you need it to work. But here's what makes the TL1000S the ultimate disaster. It combined multiple dangerous characteristics into one supremely lethal package. The powerful V-twin engine produced strong torque that could overwhelm the rear tire. The chassis was prone to high-speed instability, and the suspension system would fail when you needed it most. It's like someone took all the worst aspects of motorcycle design and combined them into one bike. The tank slapper phenomenon occurs when the front wheel begins oscillating violently from side to side, usually triggered by hitting a bump or irregularity in the road surface at high speed. On most motorcycles, this is a brief, manageable event. On the TL1000S, it was often a prelude to a catastrophic crash. Thanks for watching. Want to watch more? Click on your screen now.